Good morning. Welcome to the stream. Today on YouTube. Let's see how it goes. First time in a while on YouTube. So if you're in the chat out there, if you can just let me know if you can hear me, if you can see me, if everything's working. Looks like it's working good from my end, but let's see. So as usual, guys, if you've got any questions, stick them in the chat. Again, I've got the chat up in front of me, so I should be able to see it. Probably a slight delay on this. There usually is on these streaming things. So if you stick something in and I don't respond straight away, that's probably it. Probably just hasn't popped up yet. If it happens that you stick a question in and I just don't answer it full stop, then please just keep putting it in, because sometimes it happens that it doesn't show up on my chat for whatever reason. It just gets lost on the interweb somewhere. So if that's the case, I apologise, but just keep sticking it in the chat and I'll get to it eventually when it finally pops up. It generally does in the end. So as always, we've got a couple of questions in the hopper. This video will be recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel afterwards. I'll probably also stick it in our Facebook group as well, for those of you who are coming from the Facebook group. If you're not in our Facebook group, go and join. Tantrum Kitesurf on Facebook. Again, check it's the group, not the page. Loads of stuff going on in there. Ask questions, get loads of answers. Really great community. So just jump over there and jump in. It would be awesome to see you in there. But let's get on with these question answers. So, okay, so yeah, got a few questions in the hopper here. So I'll start with these guys. If you've got questions as they come up, either on what we're talking about now or just something totally different to do with kitesurfing, ideally, don't ask me for relationship advice. I'm not your man for that. Then stick it in the chat, and I'll finish a question off, and then I'll come back to the chat. Try not to jump back and forth between the chat and the question, because it gets quite annoying for you guys, I imagine. So first question we've got here. Someone asking about leaving kite pumped up at the beach. This is a classic. It's something, especially living in Tarifa, we see it all the time. So if someone comes on a holiday, they've got their three nice, beautiful new kites, pump them all up at the start of the day, because the winds are going to change. They stick the 12, the 9, the 6 up at the start of the day, leave them pumped up on the beach all day, and then go out on the 12, the wind picks up, they pick up the 9, come back, the wind drops again in the afternoons, they take the 12 out. Great, it's really, really convenient, really, really easy. However, you are destroying your kites. 3 worst things for kites: sand, sun, wind. So you're leaving your kite on a sunny beach, if you're in the south of Spain at least. maybe not for us guys in the UK, or for you guys in the UK, should I say. I'm in the UK currently, but won't be for long. But in most places you go on a holiday, it's going to be sunny. It's also going to be windy, and you're generally going to be on a sandy beach. Those 3 things will trash your kite. Now, I have spoken about this before, but I'll just cover it again. Basically, if you look at a flag, look at any flag that's been up a while, look at the back end of that flag, i.e. the trailing edge of that flag, and you will see the flag where it comes, it's just torn. It's shredded, absolutely shredded. It's because the back of the flag is whacking against itself and just whacking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it thins the material out and eventually just destroys it. Now that's exactly what's happening to your kite when it's sat on the beach. So if you are going to leave it on the beach, what you've absolutely got to do is secure it so there's no flapping. So you put tons and tons of sand on it until the kite is still. I always think the same as in sailing, a flappy kite is an unhappy kite. If you can hear your kite when it's sat on the beach, there's something wrong. You shouldn't be hearing it. So I'm just moving my screen out of the way there so I can see my face slightly delayed. It's really, really off-putting. So if you can hear your kite flapping, there's a problem, basically. So you shouldn't be able to hear it. So put enough sand on it so that the kite, you can't hear the back of the kite. It's not moving. It's stuck. Now what that can do, if you're not careful, by sticking so much sand on it, you actually slightly lift up the leading edge. So now wind can get under it and pick it up and flip it off down the beach. So again, make sure you secure the leading edge with something while you're doing that. Again, it's in the sun, So that's getting UV damage, that's slowly weakening the threads, weakening the material itself, and there's probably, on a windy day, going to be sand blowing over it again. Now, how much damage that does, I don't know. I'm going to assume it's probably going to do a fair amount, because it's going to be just, sand hitting over it and then friction over the top of the material, which again is probably going to degrade the kite in time. So those three things I would say highly avoid. Hi Danny, how's it going, mate? How are you? Yeah, well, not this time, mate. Not this time. It's a bit bloody cold at the moment over here. Maybe in a few months' time. So my advice, what we tended to do, what we tend to do sort of on a lunch break, is rather than leaving the kite out, what we'll do is we'll lock off. If it's a one pump system, I just lock off the struts. If it's not one pump system, you don't have to worry about this. Just deflate the leading edge, and then just roll it in along the struts. So you've got, when you come back to pump up, you've only got to pump up the leading edge rather than the struts, and then just drop a board or something on top of it to keep it out of the sun as well. That kind of works really, really well. So again, it's not the ideal solution, but it's kind of the best compromise of both worlds. It gets out of the sand a little bit, definitely out of the sun, and stops it flapping totally. So that's what I would do if I was, going on holiday and had 3 kites, wanted to put them all up, but didn't want to. Well, I would actually leave them in the bag. Leave them in the bag, pump them up, and then go out again. Definitely the best way to do it. If you're even lazier than I am, which is impressive, then you can do the struts and just leave the trailing edge down. Oh, it's warm up there, is it? Because I'm in Leeds at the moment for this week, and it's bloody freezing. Windy as chuff, but it's really cold. So yeah, but I love Scotland. Scotland is amazing. Whereabouts in Scotland are you? I love, most of Scotland, but the north coast in particular is a particular wet dream of mine. It's just, I've been once, and it's absolutely amazing up there. I'd love to do Tyree and that coast over there as well. So yeah, so it's definitely again on my kind of to repeat list. It was one of the best experience I ever had up there. And the Kyle of Tongue up there on the north coast, absolutely incredible. Literally had this lagoon, huge lagoon to ourselves, flat water lagoon, just me and a couple of mates kiting there, and then you can kite out into the wave break round the corner. Snow this morning, wow, yeah, I'll leave that a few months, mate. But amazing spot. If you can get up to the north coast of Scotland, it is incredible. Windy, beautiful. Southwest coast. All right, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, love Scotland. Amazing place. Going Torrevieja soon. Any kite schools nearby you recommend? No idea, mate. Sorry, no idea about that. No, can't help you on that, I'm afraid, Per. It is, mate. Danny, it's awesome. It is amazing. Yeah. No, sorry, Per. I'm not sure about Torrevieja. I've never really spent much time there. And again, I know kind of the kite schools in Tarifa, and the few that we work with are kind of around the world, but I'm not kind of an expert on all the different kite schools here and there. So, yes, Danny, that would be, yeah. Wim Hof method, yeah. That's the extreme version. God, yeah, I'm not quite ready to do that in my pants just yet. One day, maybe. One day when I've manned up a little bit more. But anyway, have a great time out there, mate. Have a great time. Hope you have a fantastic holiday out there, mate. Yeah, kite surfing the north coast of Scotland in my pants. That doesn't really sound much fun at the moment. Yeah, I'm not that far down the Wim Hof method as we go. Doing the cold showers, and to be fair, they're incredible. It really does change things over a period of time. It's awesome. You're not going to notice the difference on the first day. When you do, you're suddenly wide awake, obviously, a bit cold. But for increasing performance, for increasing energy levels, I've been amazed by the Wim Hof method. Absolutely amazed. It's been one of the most powerful tools that I've used over the last few years, to be honest. But yeah, not quite that advanced on it to go in my pants in Scotland yet. Maybe next year, mate. Maybe next year. Maybe we can both practice our Wim Hof methods and get up there and do it in our pants next year. How about that? Okay. Let's get away from talking about pants. So we had a couple of questions this week, and I'm going to delve into this. It's something I've been meaning to delve into for a long, long time, but just haven't really started doing it. So I'm going to make a first dive into it today, and then there's going to be a lot more appearing on this over the next few weeks and months, because it's a huge topic that I think there's an awful lot of confusion about. And that is nutrition for kite surfing. A lot of people say, I had a comment on the group this morning, how do people kite surf for kind of 5-6 hours at a time? What's the best kind of pre-snack, post-kite surfing snack, whilst I'm kite surfing snack, to keep my energy levels up? What do I need to be eating, just day to day to help me kite surfing on the water so that I can go down there, with loads of energy and just bring it every single time? And the reason I've kind of avoided it is because it's a minefield. It's a absolute minefield when it comes down to it. But I've worked with an awful lot of people doing this. This is what we kind of do with our clients. So I'm going to delve into it today, very, very briefly, give you a quick overview. And then we'll, as I say, I'm going to do a lot more in-depth videos on this and articles and things like this over the next coming weeks and months. So hopefully you get a lot better idea of kind of where I come from it when I'm dealing with, a kite surfer who's looking to up their performance, how I go about doing it with them, the results that I've had and what works for me and what works for them. Now, the first thing about nutrition is obviously there's no one size fits all. That's the first thing. I want to get that out of the way first of all, straight off the bat. But, back to addressing the question, how do you kite surf for kind of, 4, 5, 6 hours at a time? And what nutrition do you use to keep yourself fueled for that? First thing I'd say is if you're unable to kite for around about 2 to 3 hours in general, there's something fundamentally wrong. Generally, if I'm kiting for about 2 to 3 hours in a day, I will not change anything about my nutrition. My nutrition just goes as normal. I don't do anything special. It stays exactly as it is. If you can't kite for that long, I would suggest there's something fundamentally wrong, and this is irrespective of age. I don't care what age you are. There's something fundamentally wrong with your lifestyle that probably needs addressing first before we start looking at fancy fixes. And what I would suggest for that is that I run a kitesurfing performance training. Come and join me on that. You can find it on our website at tantrumkitesurf.com. I think it's literally under Kitesurf Performance Training. Come check that out, join me on that, and we can sort that out and get you the fundamentals sorted. So that's the first thing. 2 to 3 hours, I wouldn't really change anything. I would just do exactly what I normally do. After that, if I'm going for a lot longer than that, I will start to look at different things. Now, when I say, I wouldn't change anything, what am I basing that on? A couple of things that you've got to understand first of all. When it comes to athletic performance, a lot of coaches, a lot of people out there are focused on calorific density. Just get the calories in, and that will give you enough energy on the water. And there's an argument to that, but there's a huge amount of nuance to that which doesn't really make sense. So I never ever even think about calories, never count calories, never get people counting calories. Focus on nutrient density, much more important. Don't bother counting calories, don't stress calories. Know how many calories are in things for a useful guide, but it's not something you want to count or worry about ever really. Worry about nutrient density. Get as many high nutrient foods into you as you possibly can on a consistent basis. And then pay attention to how you feel. Again, don't stress the calories, pay attention to how you feel, how you look, how things are changing. If needed, use testing to back that up. So, maybe go for a blood test to check how whatever you're doing, whether it's working. But a word to the wise about testing. We still don't really know what a healthy human should look like. There's a huge amount of talking to me. Take cholesterol, for example. Cholesterol is a great example. Everyone says, high cholesterol, really bad, you're going to have a heart attack. Well, no, it's not quite that simple. If you've got insulin resistance, then yeah, maybe that's true. But what they're finding is in a lot of populations who are insulin sensitive, the opposite is true. So having a high cholesterol level actually lowers your incidence, your probability of dying, literally. So So this is kind of where it becomes very difficult when you get testing. You go to doctor, you got high cholesterol, you need to get the cholesterol down. Well, maybe. Depends on what else is going on in your lifestyle, what else you're doing, what diet you're on, and what goals you're trying to do. Often in my clients, when I'm doing it, we see cholesterol shoot up, and that's a good thing with what we're doing. We're trying to get more cholesterol. Again, because so many studies are showing now that it's a really healthy thing to have in a healthy person. And this is one of the nuances. If you're looking at someone who's insulin resistant, you've got to treat them very differently to someone who's insulin sensitive. And the same diet will literally kill one of them and really help the other person. So Danny asked a question there. What are your favourite foods, hacks, snacks, smoothies, nuts? And again, I'm kind of coming to this because, as I say, what I'm trying to say is that I don't change anything. I don't do kind of hack snacks, smoothies, nuts, things like that. If I'm not kite surfing for more than 2 to 3 hours. So I would just kind of pay attention to my normal diet, nutrient dense foods, and go from there. That's the first thing. Now, after this, what you get to this point where coaches, in general, nutritionists, dietitians will tell you, okay, the single best food for exercise is carbs. And there's not a lot of argument about that. Okay? You carb load before a meal because it gives you delayed fatigue, it improves performance, and there's a huge body of evidence about this. You look at most athletes and they carb load. But the big question here, and I'm coming to answer your question, Danny, in a roundabout way. The big question you've got to ask yourself here is how much you're prepared to compromise your health for your kite surfing. Because that amount of carbs that you are carb loading is going to be doing you a hell of a lot of damage in the long run. You just look at one thing, spike in blood sugar. That amount of carbs on a daily basis is going to be sending your blood sugar into orbit. And the amount of health problems that are associated with repeated high blood sugar spikes are huge. On a very, very simple level, energy. You are going to be on this roller coaster ride of energy all day long with sudden peaks and then massive troughs. So, again, to go back to your question, Danny, what I talk about here is rather than carbs, become fat adapted. Now, I'm not saying go keto. I'm not trying to take keto diet. Keto diets work really, really well for some people. For some people, they're a nightmare. And again, you have to look at all this within your own personal circumstances. For some people, a high-fat diet is going to do them the world of good. If you had your gallbladder removed, maybe it's not so good. You've got a physiological condition that means you cannot digest fats, then it's not the best for you. But what I try and get the athletes that I work with to do is become at least fat adapted so they can burn fat or carbs. So they've got the choice. They've got the choice of which to go. Why? Because fat is generally a much more clean burning, powerful fuel. There's 10 times more calories, if we can talk about calories, in fat than in carbs. So it's a much more efficient fuel, and you carry it with you. So if you can burn it, you've got an endless store. Not endless, but you've got a huge store when you're out on the water. So it gives you an awful lot more energy to burn. It's a slower burn for sure. But for 2 to 3 hours, which is what most people seem to kite surf for, that's plenty. If you are fat adapted, you can kite surf for 2 to 3 hours without changing anything else. You will just use the fat that's available in your blood, in your body, on your belly. And that's why I'm saying if you can't kite for 2 to 3 hours, there's probably something wrong in the first place. I try to do that on carbs is a bit different. Now again, I know I'm kind of all over the place here, but it's just such a huge topic that I'm trying to sum it up in 5-10 minutes and give you an idea of where we're going. I'm going to run through all these points in much more detail over the next few weeks and months, so look out for the videos on those. But here's the kicker. Most people say, don't I need carbs for training? If I'm going to be doing a lot of kite surfing, don't I need carbs? And here's the kicker. Your body will burn what you eat. So if you eat a lot of carbs, your body will run on carbs. If you eat a lot of fat, your body will run on fat. Now again, we talked about the advantages of fat. It's cleaner burning. It increases energy stability. It doesn't spike your blood sugar. You've got reserves of it. So again, for 2 to 3 hours on the water, that is plenty. Now, what about, okay, great, that's fine if I'm kiting for 2 to 3 hours. What if I'm kiting for 5 or 6 hours? Yeah. Okay, this is different now because fat burning is so slow. 5 or 6 hours, you may struggle if you are just going full keto or fat burning. So at this point, I would say this when I'm kiting. If I'm on holiday, for example, if I'm kiting on a holiday, I'm kiting 5 or 6 hours a day every day. That's when I increase my intake of carbohydrates. Now I don't carb load. What I would generally do, let's say I'm going kiting for one day. I know it's really windy. 6 hours I'm going to be on the water. All I would probably do is maybe have a slightly higher carbohydrate dinner the night before, some starchy carbs, sweet potato, yuca, plantain, something like that, white rice. Slightly more carbs that morning for breakfast. So again, if you eat bread, that's a whole other discussion. There's a whole other rabbit hole that we can go down. But just a few slices of toast and whatever you normally have for breakfast, and then go kite surfing. Then maybe have a mid, after 2 or 3 hours on the water, have a mid kite surfing snack, nuts, fruit, whatever, something like that. And then go out again, and probably again that night have a slightly higher carb dinner. So again, starchy carbs, rice, sweet potatoes, yuca, things like that for just to keep those glucose levels up in the body. But apart, if I was just kind of a normal day, 2 3 hours, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't do any of that. I wouldn't even think about carb loading. Because your body should be able to deal with it. If you've got the fundamentals covered, and again, if you can't do that as a general rule, then I would suggest there's something that you need to address in the fundamentals that needs changing so that you can. And again, if I was on a holiday, we're kiting every day for 5 or 6 hours, then yeah, of course, I would definitely eat more carb, because sometimes, I'm not saying it's healthy, but you need to sacrifice that bit of health for the endurance gains that you need for that week. If you're asking your body to do a crap ton of unnaturally hard work, you need to give it some sweet potatoes, some rice to be able to do that work. So again, hopefully, sort of jumping back to that. I hope that kind of gives you a very, very, very quick intro into nutrition. But yeah, just look at the comments here. Yeah, Scotland will train you in fat consumption for sure. But yeah, you're right. Not all fats are input, definitely, and especially how you cook them. Bulletproof is a great template. I don't fully agree with everything that Bulletproof talk about, but it's a great starting template to use, yeah, especially for kite surfing. It's really, really good for those kite surfers who kite surf between, as I say, 1 and 3 hours. If you're going for more than that, I think you need to start doing other stuff. But for a great template to start with, for a normal kite who's going to be kiting 2 or 3 hours a few times a week, Bulletproof is a great template to go down. Really, really helps. Again, a few caveats. Not a huge fan of Bulletproof coffee. I love the taste of it. Not a huge fan of the effects. Some people it works like gangbusters. Other people it really doesn't. And it's all to do with the liquid fats. Some people can process liquid fats really well. Other people, like me, really can't. Carsten, how are you, sir? So it just depends where you are going and what you're trying to do with it. And again, a lot of it depends on your biology, but a lot of it depends on where you are with your kite surfing as well. So yeah, so there's a very, very quick breakdown into nutrition. I say this is something that really, I would talk about for weeks and weeks and weeks. And indeed, with the clients that I work with, we spend weeks and weeks and weeks breaking this down, tweaking it, perfecting it for them. So again, if you're interested in that, on the website, tantrumkitesurf.com, the Kitesurf performance training there. It's something that we look at hugely, because obviously nutrition is massively important to us kitesurfers, especially if you're taking your kitesurfing seriously. It's something that is a huge help. About energy levels, recovery levels, how much weight you're carrying on the water, what kite size you need to take out, stupidly. The vanity aspect of it as well, obviously, for a lot of people, that's a big thing. So it is a huge, and it's something that's not talked about in kitesurfing circles at all. And it's something that actually is very interesting for kitesurfing, simply because we don't know enough about kitesurfing as a sport to understand perfect nutrition for kitesurfing. We still don't know, for example, if kitesurfing is a power sport, if it's an endurance sport. We just don't know. These studies have not been done. I think there's one study on PubMed actually looking at fitness in kitesurfers, and it's a very, very rough and ready study. Saying are kitesurfers better endurance athletes than the average man? Well, yeah, funnily enough, take a few pro kitesurfers, they are better endurance athletes than the normal man, so it doesn't really tell us a right lot. But they actually know very little about it. as an exercise, as a form of exercise. Again, it's very difficult to study, but also there's never really been a need to study it. Now, hopefully with the Olympics, we're going to see an explosion in the amount of kind of study that goes into formal research that goes into kite surfing. But at the moment, it's just not there. So we just don't know. We really struggle to lock down what type of kite sport is kitesurfing. We just don't know. They only just worked this out for climbing. Climbing is a much older sport than kitesurfing. I was at a conference the other week, and there was a woman who was one of the top scientists in the world of climbing, and she was saying, "We've just literally realised that climbing is a power sport." Wow! So the things they don't know about kitesurfing is just untrue at the moment. As I say, hopefully the Olympics change that. At the moment, we just don't know. Paige, how are you? Long time no speak. So right, okay, that's that. Again, if you want more of that, I can talk about it forever. It's one of my most interest, topics of most interest, and I spend a lot of time studying, and we do go into it in our programs. If you are interested, hit me up on that. I would love to help you with it. So let's crash on back to technique. So I've got another question here. This came up on our YouTube channel, actually, talking about water starting and riding in general. And it was a video I think I was talking about strokes. I'm going to talk about stroke. It was a video talking about stroking and... Oh, cheers, Danny. Thank you, mate. Much appreciated. I'll catch you soon. Talking about stroking. Stroking of the kite. As in not stroking, but stroking the kite up and down. And the question was, he was finding it more efficient to do short strokes rather than long strokes. And in the video, I was saying that we need to be doing longer strokes. We need to be much longer, much smoother, long strokes. Now, the reason that I suggest this, especially for beginners, because we lose power when the kite turns. So if you're doing short strokes, especially in the water start stage, you're going to lose a lot of power as the kite's turning. Now, this changes slightly when you're... I shall, sir, I shall. This changes slightly when when you are moving with the kite. And I actually failed to answer this in the reply to the comments, so I have to go back and edit this. When you're water starting, you want big strokes. So you want a nice big downstroke, big upstroke, and another big downstroke to get you moving, because the kite is losing power when it's turning, because you're not moving. Now, when you're riding, this changes. So you can get away with much shorter strokes. Why? Because as the kite is turning, it's still losing power, so to speak. Because you're moving with the kite's not losing as much speed. So I hope this makes sense. Again, just let me know in the chat if this makes sense, because there's quite a big difference. So when you're water starting, you're not moving. You're sat in the water, stable. And there's only the true wind is flowing over that kite. So when you do a downstroke, the power is generated in the actual motion of the kite. And as soon as you start to turn, now you're just relying on the wind speed again. And then you fling the kite back up again. You've got the wind speed plus the apparent wind that's generated by the kite. And then it comes to turn again. And because you're still not moving, or because you're moving very slowly, there's still not a lot of apparent wind being generated by the kite. So you're totally reliant on apparent wind pretty much when you're water start. Once you're riding, because you and the kite are both moving, you are generating consistent apparent wind over the kite. So it's not so important whether you do big strokes or small strokes. You can do much smaller strokes and get away with it. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that answers the question. I answered it badly on the reply to the comment, maybe because I hate typing. So when you are water starting, big strokes when you're riding, you can really do what works at the time. And in fact, big strokes when you're riding might be a bad thing, because you might get ripped off downwind. So hope that helps people out. I hope that you understand the difference between riding and between when you water starting and when you're riding, and the stroke size of the kite and what you can really get away with. Okay, guys, I'm going to keep rambling. If you've got any more good questions, any questions, stick them in the chat. If not, I'm going to keep banging on with the ones we've got in the hopper. Just check if I missed anything. No, I think we've got everything there. So, okay, if you've got any questions, this is your time. Hand it over the floor to you guys. Stick it in the chat and we'll go through it from there. If not, as I say, I'm going to keep on banging on about things people have asked this week in the group and on the YouTube channels and by email and things like this. Okay, so what have we got here? Got asked a few questions because I've been releasing a few videos on YouTube about actual kitesurf fitness, kitesurf exercises you can do, body weight exercises, resistance band exercises, things like this. And we got a... Oh, okay, but I'll answer you better. Ever experienced a kite man? Many. many, sir. Many. I learned back in the day when you literally carabined yourself into the kite and there was no D-power and things like this. I think my finest kite man moment was in Tarifa. I was learning on, what were they called? The Mach 1s or the Mach 2s, I think it was. It was F1 Mach 2, I think it was, which was a 7-strut, 16-metre monster, high aspect monster of a kite. Basically, the most inappropriate kite you could possibly think of learning on. But a mate of mine had them sitting around and was trying to sell them and sold them to me for what I thought was a bargain. I think I got them both for 150 quid at the time. With bar, perfect, great condition. And hoisted these, and I taught myself to kitesurf. So I'll go and fly these, this should be great, it'll be awesome. Put the kite up, way too much wind, and was just bouncing down the beach. Literally, it wasn't actually flying. Luckily, I was kind of bouncing and landing on my feet, and then bouncing off again, and just bouncing down the beach. But there was this at the time in Tarifa, they had kind of kids' play areas in the beach, and wooden kids' play areas on the beach. And I was just heading straight towards that. So pull the release. Oh, a few have done that, and then the leash itself snapped. So the kite just drifted up, took off, drifted up, and landed. And there's I don't know if you've been to Tarifa, but there's a football pitch right on the beach in Tarifa, kind of an enclosed football stadium. Not a huge football stadium, as you'd expect for small villages like Tarifa, but a football stadium nevertheless. And this kite just drifted over the walls of the football stadium and landed in the centre circle. Now, I couldn't see it because of the walls, obviously. So I came out to run around, climb over the walls of this football stadium in the middle of a football match, to all the jeers of the crowd, and go and ask the referee for my kite back. Dripping wet, covered in sand from being dragged down the beach. I had to lug my kite out of the stadium in shame. So that was probably the one that I remember the most. But yeah, I've had many a kite there. I've got a mate who's been kiting longer than I have, and he has them every week. It just happens, I think kite mares are something that you have to accept are going to happen, but the key is that you are able to react in a sensible way when you're having one, to get yourself out. And this is what I always say, and this is now making a serious point, is that you make your mistakes on the beach. By the time you're on the water, it's way too late. You've already made any mistakes you've got to make. And this is kind of where it comes. This is the very non-sexy aspect of kite surfing. But every time you rock up at any beach, you should be making a risk assessment. And I always think you have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. Okay, if my kite goes down, what's plan A? What's plan B? What's plan C? And the other thing that I always think is, okay, if my kite goes down and I cannot relaunch it, what is the criteria for getting rid of this kite on this particular day? Where's my point of no return? Especially important if your kite's in a kind of cross off winds or on a big wave day. What are my criteria for getting rid of this kite and just getting myself back to safety? Always do these risk assessments before you get out. If this happens, what am I going to do? Run through the pack down, run through the self-rescue. Not necessarily every day, but just have it. Just the thing with self-rescue is we teach on our courses, and I tell people when we're doing this, look, you will probably never, especially with the kites these days, you will never do this, or you won't do this for another 6 months, year. And by then you will have forgotten everything I've just told you. So especially when you're first starting out, when you're at the beach, when you rock up at the beach, I would spend 5 minutes just doing a risk assessment. Okay, what are the conditions? What's going on out there? What's my plan A? What's my plan B? What's my plan C? What are my escape routes? Where's my point of no return? And do I remember the basic principles of self-rescue? Of getting rid of the kite and going through the self-rescue. Do I remember the basic principles? Do I need to run through it again? Have I checked that my kite still does it? I.e. that the release still works and that the bar runs nice and smooth up the lines, because as they get older, that tends to get worse on bars and lines. Is this bar the right bar for the kite? So I know that when I do it, it's going to depower fully. If the kite doesn't depower fully when I pull this, how do I do it? Which side of the kite have I attached my flag line to? Now, this is a big one that a lot of people don't get. Where you attach your flag line is actually important, because often on most four-line kites, one of the centre lines is going to be the flag line. And it's important which side of the kite you attach that to, because the kite's going to tend to fall towards that side. So if you release, so let's say you're riding in cross-shore winds, the wind's coming from behind me here, and I've attached the flag line on my left-hand side of my kite, but the beach is to the right-hand side. Now I pull the safety, the kite falls to the left-hand side, and I'm getting dragged by whatever little wind there is out to sea. So I want to make sure on the day when it's cross-shore that I've attached it to the beach side. So when the kite drops, it's not always going to work. 8 times out of 10 it will drop on that side. The kite's going to sit on that side and it's going to be pulling me back towards the beach. So all these little things like this add up slowly to mean that when you get out on the water, when you do experience the inevitable nightmare, you're prepared for it. And it's, okay, this is cool. I know exactly what's going to happen to me. Oof, Jesus, Per, that sounds nasty, yeah. But yeah, 17 years ago, wow, those kites were men's kites. They were madmen's kites. But yeah, wow, yeah, no safety. I imagine it's one of these where you're probably carabined in as well, even if not when you first start. Your last reaction is to let go of it, isn't it? Oof, bloody hell. Well, I'm glad to see that you're still here and kiting, mate. I mean, I think that would have A, put most people off kiting for life, but B, I think a lot of people wouldn't have walked away from that. So awesome to see, mate. Yeah, those were the days, weren't they? Jesus, I remember when I first started kiting, it was literally a case of when you get injured, not if you get injured kite surfing. I'm glad to say the kit has come on so far since then. Unfortunately, I think, or maybe fortunately in a way, the image of kite surfing is still very much of this very, very extreme sport where you will get injured. And in my experience, as long as you're taught right and you know what you're doing, the risk level of kite surfing has dropped massively. since the advent of bow kites in about 2005, 2006, really. Whereas now, if you're smart, it's a sport where you can really, really enjoy it without the crazy, crazy risk that used to be involved back in 2000, 2000 to 2005. As I say, then it was just a case of when you were going to get injured. And I say maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. I think it puts a lot of people off from getting in, but it also gives people who do get into the sport a healthy respect for it, which I think is something that we as kite surfers can lack. Because, let's say windsurfing, for example, windsurfers, it's such a long and slow learning curve to become a decent windsurfer. But by the time you get there, you understand Mother Nature. You have a very healthy respect for Mother Nature. You have a very healthy respect for how quickly conditions can change, for how quickly things can go wrong. And this is windsurfing, which isn't, where you're not attached to your sail. It's very easy to unhook. Whereas kitesurfing, because we can be up in kitesurfing literally a couple of days sometimes, depending on where we're riding, but certainly within a week or 2 weeks, we don't tend to learn that respect as much, especially if we've not got a background in water sports or extreme sports or outdoor sports even. We tend to just think, this is fine. We go catch on really nice sunny days and everything's cool. And then suddenly the weather changes, bump, and we're really caught out by it. So I think there's an awful lot to be said for having that respect for Mother Nature and for the sport and the powers involved in the sport that we do, which we can lack a little bit in kitesurfing, especially when you've learned in a week. Some beautiful flat water, perfect conditions. That would be my kind of takeaway from that one. But yeah, as I say, Per, very glad to see that you're still here and still doing it. Awesome, mate. Guy Fawkes, is that your real name, sir? I'm 88 kilos, that sounds me, and want to buy 3 kites to get as much wind as much as possible. Which kite should I buy? Okay, I'm a beginner. Great. First way to answer this is a really common question. Go old school and big air. I want to put a lot of time in and kite in many different spots around the world. Right, okay, that was my first question. Where are you going to kite? That's going to be your big one. Where are you going to kite? Now, again, depends what you're doing. If you're talking old school and big air, let's put down a few principles first, okay? I generally say don't go more than 3 meters between kites. So what do I mean by that? If you've got a 9 meter, don't buy an 11 or a 13, buy a 12. If you've got a 10, buy a 13. If you've got a 13, buy a 16. So I would think a nice 3 meter gap in between kites is a great crossover where you get a little bit of crossover, but not too much that you could use the same kite on the same day. It's going to be fairly obvious on which day you've got to use which kite, but also you haven't got a gap in the middle, because what can happen when you have let's say a 9 and a 15 is that you'd have a really big gap in there in kind of that 12-13 meter range where you're going to really struggle. Now, you also have a few options here. You could buy, if you had 2 boards, which are cheaper than kites, last longer and keep the value better, it gives you more options. You have a small board and a big board, i.e. a twin tip and a surfboard. Now, that obviously gives you even more options. And in that case, you can probably afford to go a bit more than 3 meters in between your kites. Why? Because on the one day you can ride your 9 meter with a twin tip. On the next day, you can ride your 9 meter with a surfboard. And it changes the wind range of that kite, because obviously the surfboard is much more buoyant, much more floaty. So you can get out in much lighter winds on your surfboard on your 9 meter than you could with your twin tip, whereas your twin tip can hold down a lot more wind than your surfboard can. So it increases the wind range of that 9 meters. So in that case, if you had 2 boards, you could probably go 4 meters in between kites if you were prepared to swap boards. So again, as with all these things, it's not just a case of saying, get this kite, this kite, this kite. There's a lot of nuance to this depending on what you're doing and how you're trying to do it. Now, I prefer the less kites, more boards approach. Why? Because kites are bloody expensive, get damaged really easily, and don't retain their value from year to year. Literally, you sell your kite, the year after and it's worth half as much. Whereas a board, you'll still get a decent value on as long as you've looked after it, which is much easier to do with a board in general. But as a general rule, I always recommend to people about my weight, 6, 9, 12. Really nice limit. Gets you out in really, really strong winds. You know, 6 metre will get you out, 6 metre on a twin tip will get you out in honking Levante and Tarifa generally up to kind of 35, even 40 knots. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but you can do it. Your 12 will get you out in nice light winds. Now again, it depends. Some people like light winds, some people hate strong winds, and vice versa. So again, if you're more of a kind of, I like it calm and I like light winds and I might get into foiling eventually, I would probably change that to, you know, something like 8, 11, 14. If you were going down the other end, I'm going to Cape Town, it's going to be nuclear, you want maybe 4, 7, 10. Now, I'm talking about kind of an Tarifa where we get a huge range of winds for everything from 8 knots up to 48 knots, which is kitesurfable. So for there, I go 6, 9, 12 generally. I actually haven't at the moment, but that's because the kites I bought didn't come in. I think I'm 7, 10 and 14 at the moment, which isn't ideal because I do lack in between that 10 and 14. I do lack a space in between that, which I have to fill with boards at the moment, with changing boards. So it does depend a little bit on what your preferences are wind-wise, where you're going to be kiting. Are you going to be kiting in light wind or sort of strong winds? Are you going to have 2 boards, or are you prepared to go down that route? And yeah, I mean, you said you go as old school and big air. And again, it depends. On big air, you can do both ways. Big air, you take a small kite out in honking winds and just fling it, or you can take a huge kite out in lighter winds on shorter lines and have a nice slow floaty jump, which is kind of what Toby does. What's it called? Air style, the air style stuff. So there's a lot of nuance, and it's a very difficult question to answer. Just say get this, and this without kind of knowing a lot more about where you want to go. But hopefully that gives you kind of the principles that I use when I'm deciding which kites to buy. So yeah, let me know if that helps you, guy. And if there's any more questions that flings up. My personal favourite kite brand model, my personal favourite is Airrush. Personally, I've been with it. In the school, we used to try, or we tried different kites every year. They're the only brand that I've stuck with for, I think we've been with it about 10 years now. Because the kites the DNA is the best, and I say this kind of empirically, is the best kite to learn on, full stop. Full stop. I have not seen another kite that performs as well as that in Tarifa, in gusty winds, for teaching, on short lines. It's just incredible. It's the first kite up on the beach, it's the last kite down. And it's been that way for the last 10 years, really. You know, we switched them because we were riding different kites, and we saw every other school that was on Irish was teaching, and we couldn't, because they just handled the gusts so much better. And that's kind of led me into Irish. And I love their philosophy. You know, I really do. They're the only company. I'm actually doing a podcast with Mike from K2 Distribution in a couple of weeks about this, about kite pricing. Can I repeat the name of the kites I like? Airrush guy. If you're interested, let me know. I can get you them. If you're interested in buying them, send me an email with what you want, and I can help you out and actually order them for you as well. So yeah, and then I kind of took that forward, and I love the pricing model. I love the R&D they do. I love the philosophy of the company. I love the way they're going. I just think they're a really, really great kite, equivalent in quality to the better manufacturers, but at a more reasonable price. I really, really like them. That said, most kites are great these days. You know, that's not to say if you've got a Cabrina kite, you've made a mistake, or I'm the right person. You know, every kite is different, and some people will turn around and say, I've ridden Air, I really didn't like them. Buy North, buy Duotone, whatever. This is personal opinion, you know, and a lot of it is based on what we've seen teaching beginners. The DNA is just an amazing kite for that. Absolutely amazing. Reading kites, I haven't tried them. I haven't actually tried them, Guy. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I think the company that we work with in Tarifa, I think they are stocking them. So when I get back to Tarifa this weekend, I'm hopefully going to take one for a trial run next week and be able to let you know. But I haven't actually tried them, to be honest, so I couldn't give an opinion on them. I would be lying. I'd be talking out my ass if I tried to talk about them. As I moved from the Netherlands to Bonaire, lucky you. The Netherlands, I'm using a 10 at 15 knots. Over here, for 40 at 15 knots. Yeah, absolutely. Temperature and density, absolutely. We find exactly the same thing. This is why we can teach in Tarifa in Levante at like 50 knots. Well, probably not 50 knots, but definitely at kind of 40 plus knots we can actually teach. Levante is a dry, warm wind blowing off the land, so it's less dense. Whereas the Poniente is a wind that blows in off the Atlantic, very, very dense, very, very damp. And if we tried teaching anything over about 25 knots in that, it gets dangerous. So this makes a huge difference, how dense the air is, how warm the air is, how much moisture's in the air, which is why I'm not a big fan of the anemometers. Simply because they'll give you the wind speed, but they tell you nothing about the density. Whereas you can actually feel the density a lot better, bizarrely, on your skin. Your skin is still the best guide, I think, to wind speed. Put your face into the wind. What does it feel like? Does it feel chunky? I can't really describe it better than that. But does it feel? Does it feel? Wow, this is all right. And you can see the effect on the sea as well. So yeah, that's exactly what that will be. I would imagine temperature and density of the wind. Okay, guys, we are coming to the end. Any more questions? Any more questions on the questions we've answered? Any more explanations that I didn't give sufficiently that you want more insight into? Give you a few minutes to let the chat catch up. If there's no more questions, then I will leave it there. Yes, Carson, I will, mate. I will. No problems, mate. Yeah, I thought that. I thought there had been an issue this morning. I'll check my email and we'll sort something out. If there's no more questions, I will leave it there. I'll say have a great weekend kite surfing. If you're not if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please click subscribe, ring the bell so you get updated when we're doing these. We'll probably do these on YouTube in the future. They seem to get better interaction on YouTube than in the Facebook group, simply because I think there's more people on YouTube in general than the Facebook group. But if you're not part of our Facebook group, head over there, Tantrum Kitesurf group on Facebook. Just do a quick search, Tantrum Kitesurf, in the search box in Facebook, and then click on the groups. That's important. Don't join the page. I'm not nearly as active on the page, but in the group I'm in there pretty much every day. And there's a load of other people in there as well, real experts in kitesurfing. People who have been kitesurfing longer than I have. A load of other sort of really, really good kiters in there who can really help you out as well. Check out our website, tantrumkitesurf.com. Thank you, Bert. Thank you, Bert. And I will speak to you all same time. I'm amazed that any of you actually got here as well, because I've been moved back to the UK. I absolutely buggered up the timings on this one. I didn't know if it was 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, didn't know which time zone I was in. So well done everyone for being here. You've done better than I did this week. Next week at the same time, probably on YouTube again. I'll announce it in the group, and I'll also set it up on YouTube from there. So look forward to speaking to you all next week. As always, if you've got any questions, beforehand, either stick them in the event, in our Facebook group, or in the comments of the video before it actually goes live as well. You can do that and I'll answer them from there. So thank you guys, great to speak to you all. Have a great weekend. Hope you all get out and it's windy where you are, and I'll speak to you all next week.